Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another episode of the Business Storytelling Podcast. And today's episode is also live streamed on LinkedIn. And I want to talk about agility in marketing. And of course, as is often the case, I am not the expert on that exact topic. So, of course, I found an expert in Andrea Fryrear. Andrea, how's it going today?
Going great, going great. Happy to be here.
So you actually wrote the book on the topic, and you're coaching people on how to be more agile in their marketing. But to get us started, what does that even mean? How do you show agility, and how does that help?
Yeah, there's some common associations of agile being all about speed or productivity, and those are great things, and we certainly expect those to happen when we are being more agile. But for me, it really comes down to a matter of focus, right? Creating focus on the most important and impactful work that we could be doing, and then really focusing our energy and productive time on getting those things done before we move on to the next thing. So then we're not falling victim syndrome where we're chasing after the next good thing and not really ever delivering value to the customer. So agile is that mechanism behind the scenes, the way of working that really forces us to get those most important things done first.
And of course, how do you decide what's most important? Like, how do you go about that, and how do you, how do you prioritize?
Yeah, it makes us make tough choices, really. But there are some great tools from the agile world that we borrow for this, which there are things like a backlog, which is like a to-do list, but we apply the practice of ruthless prioritization to it. So a to-do list, right, is a backlog. We put the most important thing up at the top and so forth all the way down. And there are no side-by-side priorities. There can't be competing number one priorities. We have to really make those tough calls and say, no, if I could only do one thing today, I would do this thing. Or if I could only do one thing this quarter, I would do this thing. And leadership obviously has to be involved at a strategic level to convey those priorities for a marketing organization. And then the teams do that as well, understanding the goals and priorities of marketing. Then they can prioritize their own activities to meet those goals. And so, like I said, it's really that focused lens that we apply. And it's tough, like, especially the first time you do it, it can be a revelatory yet painful exercise. But once you do it, it's this amazing tool that you can't live without it once you have it.
And so I can just see the debates happening. No side-by-side priorities. Not everything can be number one priority. I mean, I have those discussions. I mean, I've had that so many times in my career, right? What's the top priority? Well, it depends on who's coming to you. Whatever, it's their top priority, but is it the marketing teams? Is it whatever? And then, of course, in your book, if you guys want to check that out, ctrap.online/Andrea, Andrea. That goes over right to Amazon if you want to take a look. Talked about I can't think of the name now. Every time a chief marketing officer starts somewhere, the sand clock, what is it called? The sand thing turns over. The hourglass.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, it's really, there was just another article about it in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago about how the CMO tenure is just so dramatically shorter than their colleagues in the C-suite. And it's right. You hire this chief marketing executive and the clock starts ticking. It's like 2 years right now for something to that effect for a CMO. And they always come in and they do these enormous things, right? We got to rebrand and we got to redo the website and we got to do these really hefty long-term projects that just stretch on and on. And so it's a year plus before they can actually point to anything and say, this is what I did and this is the value that I provided as the leader of the market. Really kind of sad, right? As a career marketer myself, to see our our beloved profession marketing executives are able to do and what others are. But agile is really, to me, the key to fixing that problem, because it allows you to really say, what's something that I could do that's going to deliver value to the business, deliver value to our customers really quickly, focus on getting that done, show the value, prove the impact, and then iterate on it when it's successful, kick it aside when it's not, and really to like become this self-perpetuating engine of value instead of the common perception, which is that marketing is, right, the cost center, where we just throw money and we don't ever see anything coming back out.
I was pretty sure you were going to use the term arts and crafts department. Go ahead and just, right, create this thing, and hopefully it will work.
Right.
But we might know that it doesn't. So how? But in the reality, right? I mean, what you're describing, I can just see a lot of uncomfortable conversations, right? Like, why is this a priority? Why do we work on that? Why do we do it? We need more information. Have you filled out the project brief? Blah blah blah. How do you maneuver through that? And then also maybe even more importantly, you know, I mean I grew up in Germany. I'm about as straightforward as they come. You heard me already talk about how hard it is to do 18 things here on the live stream. But you know, how do we teach people to have those conversations and not just live in their little world and you know, follow orders, I guess?
Yeah, no, it's one of the reasons I think that the agile way of thinking, right? You would hear an agile coach call it the agile mindset, is particularly important, because we can try to parachute these practices in, right? Bill, if you're not having hard conversations, and if you're not forcing both yourselves as a marketing leader and your colleagues who are making requests of you to really say, it's not actually physically possible to do everything. There are only so many hours in a day, and it's quite detrimental to the people doing the work, and it's detrimental to our stakeholders, because, right, the more we're doing, the longer it all takes. So it's really bad for all of them as well. So what I like to say to the teams that I coach is put your marketer hat on, right? Pitch it to them, make them understand why this is a good idea from their perspective, to winnow down not the number of things we're ever going to do, but the number of things we're going to do right now. And it's a matter of honesty and transparency around why are we marketing, right? What are we here to do? And is the work we're doing delivering that objective? And if it's not, then it's time to put it at the bottom of the list, right? And really focus on the things that are going to move the needle. People sometimes don't like to hear that their project is not a needle moving priority, but it's the reality that we can only do so much at one time.
Isn't that true? We can only do so much at one time. And I don't know if you gave that example in your book or if I just thought about that the other day, but I see a lot of chief marketing officers, they come in and they launch a new website, for example, right? Because that's going to take you a year, already ate up half of your 2 years runway to make things work. And sometimes if, you know, just building a website, it doesn't help that much, honestly, if you don't do all the other right things.
Right.
So how do you move towards some of those quick wins? How do you figure out what, you know, what can help you? What kind of tips do you have?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of taking the product to marketing. Like, what's your minimum viable campaign? So the same principle applies as you would apply to a minimum viable product. Like, what's the outcome you're hoping for here? And then what's the smallest subset of work you could do that might still get you there, right? Instead of waiting until you've got your entire email drip and 15 landing pages and every single, right, downloadable piece of collateral that you need, can you launch with 2 emails, 1 landing page, and 1 ebook, right? And see what happens. And then while you're testing through that, you're still working on the next phase using the data that's coming in. But you've got it out there, right? And you're learning from it, you're getting feedback on it instead of waiting 6 to 8 months, which is the average for a marketing campaign, which I still can't believe. But instead of waiting those months and months to put anything out, and in that amount of time, like, look at what's happened in the last 6 to 8 months right now. I mean, we've got to go faster. There's just no way to have that kind of lead time and expect anything to land these days.
6 to 8 months, I can't even imagine. You know, I'm running campaigns here and I'm looking at them daily and I'm seeing what's working and what's not working. And when something isn't working, you just update it. So is it really just about focusing your time better, or how do you move forward? I mean, I'm thinking about the whole stay-at-home coronavirus pandemic here. And, you know, I found a lot more time to just write. You know, people wouldn't come by, or there wouldn't be meetings all day or something like that. And just that focused time to get things done, it was more existent. I mean, is that part of the trick to move forward, or how do people accomplish this?
It is. Yeah, it absolutely is. In an agile environment, right, we try to concentrate the value of meetings into a really small number of them that have a very clear purpose, clear time box, get in, get out, get it done, so that we can spend the vast majority of our time actually working. Which I've coached teams, right, that at the end of a week, they might have 5 hours out of a 40-hour work week to sit down and right at their computer and focus time. And you can't expect great results from people in those kinds of situations. So, right, we plan for a small amount of time at the beginning of a week, let's say. And so we're just thinking about what do we need to do in the next week to really move ourselves forward towards our goal. We all agree, we commit to our activities, and then we go and do them. We check in with one another every day, right, for a quick 15-minute stand-up. How's it going? Are you making progress? Did you get stuck? Do you need my help? Right, those kinds of conversations. And then at the end of a week, we go to our stakeholders and say, here's the progress that we made. What you think? Right? Give us feedback. How are we doing? Or perhaps if we are a smaller and more nimble group, we don't need to do that, right? We can just release it to live, to an audience, and get their immediate responses and reactions. And then we use that to inform the work that we come up for the next couple of weeks, right? And so, but there's not a lot of overhead, right, in terms of meetings and things like that when we get into this way of working. But again, we're back to the mindset, because you have to trust people that they're going to go and do this, right? That you don't need to police them through all these status meetings and things like that. That when they're off doing things, they're doing things. And I think that's something we're going to find more and more of as we all end up in this remote work thing for longer than we might have originally wanted to be.
And so one thing I think I heard is collaboration is pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding that space for collaboration. And I think people they can get worried when they hear about this, like, you know, we only talk to one another at these quick stand-up meetings. What sometimes the misunderstanding is that, well, then I'm alone for the other 7 hours and 45 minutes of the day and no one's around to talk to me or brainstorm with me or help me. But, you know, it happens naturally, and people will still jump on Zoom together or jump in a meeting room when we had those and say, like, I'm having this problem. Can you help me work through it? And those things still happen naturally. We just don't have the 2-hour marathon, right? Death march style meetings where nobody's getting value out of them and we're all trapped in the room together.
So, what's interesting about that comment to me, though, is when you said, you know, I'm by myself for the 7 hours or whatever it might be. It actually running campaigns, figuring things out, trying new things, even if you talk about content creation, it takes brain power and it takes time. And every time somebody slacks me or somebody texts me or somebody calls me, I'm being taken out of that. Out of that feeling or, that zone, I guess, so to speak. So has the coronavirus pandemic helped us do that better, since many of us are now working at home, or what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's quite contextual. Pre-pandemic, I traveled all the time. I went face to face to clients almost every week. And so I had very little of the precious, focus, heads down, write something kinds of time. And I was out of pocket in that way. But now that we are locked down, I'm not traveling, and I had these beautiful visions of all this content creation time, managing my team through these kinds of Zoom calls. And so it's flipped in a different way. And I think some of it depends on your responsibilities in the organization. I think leaders are finding themselves in more meetings because it's less easy to collaborate sometimes with a group, so you need more one-on-one sessions, and that takes up more time. But I know a lot of individual contributors who have found it quite liberating to be freed from the drop by, chit chat of the office, and to put those blinders up and to feel like they have that right and that opportunity. So I think there's people having both experiences, and we could have both types of experiences if we're just willing to say, from 2 to 4 every afternoon, right? No Zoom calls. We're all just head down or whatever, and to allow that to happen, which can feel like a bit of a liberty to be taken, but it's very important. It's not a small thing to provide that space in people's professional day.
Very, very interesting. And so talk about the process. I mean, you've been talking about this topic for a while. Is this the first book on the topic, or what prompted this particular angle?
Yeah, this is my second book on marketing agility. My first book is called Death of a Marketer. A little
Mhm.
marketing plug right there. That one came out 3 years ago now, in March, 3 years ago. And that was kind of a backward looking book, looking at like the history of marketing and advertising and how did we get where we are? Why is that sort of the battle cry for why we need agility? The new book is the culmination of about 5 years of really hands-on work with in one way or another, with everything I've learned, right? So thinking through what are the practices from agile frameworks that really work super well for marketers, which ones should we run the other direction away from? And it's really quite tactical in terms of how do you do this? What are the meetings that you need? Who attends them? What are the roles on the team? How often do you meet? How do you visualize your work so that you get this right prioritization capability? It's very, this is what I do for my clients, and laid it out in the book, because we marketers really need this. Like we're on the struggle bus a lot of the time, and I feel for my colleagues, and really it's I'm a content marketer from way back, and I really just want to help, right? And so the book seemed like a good way to provide that value and distill everything that's been going on for me professionally for the last several years.
I have a good question, I think, if I may say so myself. How do you, so there's a fine line, right? Between go implement, let's get it done, let's do it. I mean, at the end of the day, you can plan and plan and plan. I don't think that's what you're saying. But, people plan and plan and plan, and they never run a play, so to speak. But there's also, to be agile, you have to be somewhat strategic, right? You have to talk about the priorities. You have to talk about what are we working on today? Okay, I'm going to go over here, work on it for 7 hours, and I'll, give an update or whatever it might be. How do you manage those kind of people that will come to you and say, well, at some point we have to do something. We can't just be asking questions. We can't just be talking about it. We can't just be strategizing. So where's that fine line?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said the word strategy, because I think there's a misconception that agile is like anti-strategy somehow, that we just run off and do all. One just strongly in the book is kind of having these separate intersecting cycles, right? We call it the what and the how cycle. So the what cycle is that strategic perspective. What should we be doing? And what is the big picture, right? What are our big objectives? What are our core, OKRs or KPIs or whatever the acronym is that you want to use to represent this for you. And then we have the how cycle, right? The people that are super tactical and in execution mode and with their kind of work happening in the trenches, getting stuff done. And then those two cycles need to connect with one another periodically so that the people close to the customer can report back. What are they seeing? What are they learning? While the people from the kind of strategic point of view can say, here's the slight right change that we wanted to make based on that incoming data. And we've got those complementary skill sets working in unison to get things of value out the door quickly, without succumbing to the constant pivot and without succumbing to the right death by PowerPoint we planned for 6 months before we ever put anything out the door.
Yeah, I am definitely not a fan of death by PowerPoint at all. I don't know whoever is. But it is interesting, though, because you have to and you have to be strategic. I mean, the one example that came to my mind the other day is I hadn't used a specific software tool for maybe about a year. And I'm like, holy cow, a lot has changed in that software tool in 1 year, which isn't even that long for sure. How do companies get started? I mean, I assume that they can read your book, they can connect with you, but what else can they do?
Yeah, I mean, the backlog that I was talking about before is super straightforward. Way to Kanban board that having really easy, like to do, doing, done, right? And then you're going to get a view of all the things you're doing and how big that pile of stuff really is and how long does it take things to actually make it to done. You can do that for a team. You can do that as an individual if you can't, if you haven't convinced your teammates yet. So that's like the backlog plus the board is a nice straightforward starting point. If you are doing it with your team, I'm a big fan of the daily meeting, the daily stand up for 15 minutes as a supplement to those things, because then you're going to see what's moving through the board and what's getting stuck on a daily basis. And those are nice lightweight things. You can do them while you're in lockdown, right? You can throw up a Trello board and it's easy to do in 5 minutes and start having a 15-minute Zoom meeting and you're off and running, right? So there's lots of excuses to get kind of bogged down, right, in the minutia of how these things work. And I'm not going to lie, there are definitely complexities, especially if you're in a large enterprise organization, about who's on a team and what projects go, and it can be complicated. But there are simple ways to get started that will give you a lot of benefit while you're figuring out the complexities behind it all.
And I know some of us always look for software to be the solution to everything. As soon as I spend all this money on a software tool, all my problems will be solved. I'm not necessarily in that camp, but I am a fan of, Basecamp is a good one, I think. Trello, when it's used well, certainly is another. Planner is okay to an extent. I mean, there's endless tools out there. But are you a fan of putting things up on the wall, which is harder to do today, right, with sticky notes? Or are you a software? Do you recommend software? What kind of tools should people consider using?
Pre-lockdown, I was a very big sticky note fan just because it allows you to create something without constraints, right? You can set up the board the way that you believe that it should go, and then you try it for a little while. You're going to be able to easily move things around. You're not getting hung up on what the tool can do. And then that makes you a really intelligent software shopper. Like once you know that you need a digital tool, now you've got this visual representation of how your work flows and how you use it. And then you can say, all right, what digital tool will approximate as closely as possible what we're trying to do here? And then you'll buy a tool that's suited to your process instead of trying to retrofit your process into a tool. It's actually an agile value of focusing on individuals and interactions over processes and tools, because it's easy to try to throw money at a software and hope it's going to fix it, but it almost never does. So now that we are locked down and we can't really put stickies on a wall, simpler, I think, is better, which is why I mentioned Trello. Other straightforward ones that I've seen used to good effect in agile marketing teams, our plan view is quite nice. It's an agile by nature tool, so it's going to come with all the agile bells and whistles that you need. Monday is another one that's recently done a lot of good stuff to support marketing teams. Not agile by nature, but it's got that capability. It's project management by nature, but it does have the capabilities in there. So those are some nice lightweight things to start with.
I just have to say, I've never been a fan of sticky notes at all. And the reason is because my handwriting is so bad. So then people make me write stuff on a sticky note. And then the second I put up, they say, oh, who can read that? And I'm like, well, that's why I would prefer to send you text. Of course, we did have an episode with Chris Kraft. If you guys want to check it out on the Business Storytelling Podcast, how do you communicate on these tools with clients and also internally? Because I'm pretty sure, I mean, maybe you have an opinion on this, Andrea. That's also an art and a science. I mean, sometimes for example, when I get Basecamp notifications, people will respond to a message and I only see their response, but I'm missing what they're responding to, right? Because they're not summarizing it, or they're not even referring to it. They're just saying, this is crap, or you're crap, or something. And I'm like, I dare you. And maybe it was crap, but I can't even refer back to what they were talking about. Do you have any communication tips when it comes to text-based communication with your teams?
Yeah, I had a long discussion actually in a leadership class that I'm leading right now about this very thing the other day. And we came down to kind of the medium is the message in a lot of ways, and like, how are you communicating and what are you communicating? So this is crap, I hate your work you just did message is probably best conveyed with some ability to contextualize, right? And to read facial features and to hear the intonation in the voice, as opposed to solely the Basecamp notification, right? So understanding the balance between people need the cues, right? Even though we're not 3D communicating on Zoom and things, we have facial cues, we have body language that we can cue into. And so understanding the nature of what you're trying to convey, and when you really just need to get on, right, and talk to people face to face. Crody fingers for those of you not looking at me on LinkedIn right now. The face to face Crody fingers, right, is really important. Depending on what you're communicating, right? Slack, email, Basecamp notifications, Trello notifications are great for the quick little, hey, I gave you next doc notifications, but anything more serious, I think we gotta suck it up and get on video, even if we don't look that great.
Well, I will say this. I have not gone on video before because I didn't shave that day. And when I turned on the camera, I thought, oh, gross. And I didn't want to shave. So that does happen. Guys, the book is out July 21st. We're going to throw that up again here on the LinkedIn stream. Let's see if I can move that over. If you want to order it, ctrap.online/Andrea. That goes right over to the Amazon listing. Take a look at the book. July 21st, right? That's when it's coming out?
That's right. That's right.
Fantastic. The other final note I kind of forgot about earlier, we'll leave the link up there if you're watching. Again, we're live streaming with Switcher Studios. I know some people mentioned on LinkedIn it might be buffering. We'll have to take a look, see how well it came over. At the very least, it'll be on the Business Storytelling Podcast. Technology is an interesting thing. Sometimes it works perfectly, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's halfway there. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your input, and good luck with the book launch.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks everyone for listening. Until next time.